Have you ever realized you loved someone only after they were gone? I thought I had all the time in the world. I believed there would always be another tomorrow, another chance to say the words I kept hidden in my heart. But life had other plans. One unexpected moment changed everything. The person who quietly loved me for years disappeared from my life, leaving behind only memories, unanswered questions, and a regret that still follows me every single day. This isn't just a love story. It's a story about missed chances, unspoken feelings, and the painful truth that sometimes love arrives too late. If you've ever lost someone before saying, "I love you," this story will stay with you long after it ends. This is the story of "I loved you too late." My name is Emma Carter, and for the longest time I believed that love could wait. I was 26 years old, living alone in a small apartment overlooking the busy streets of Chicago. Every morning followed the same routine. I woke up before sunrise, made myself a cup of coffee, checked my emails, and hurried to work before the city fully came alive. My life looked perfect from the outside. I had a stable job as a graphic designer, wonderful friends, and enough money to live comfortably. People often told me how lucky I was. They admired my independence and my ambition, but no one knew how empty I felt whenever I came home. Silence greeted me every evening. No one asked how my day had gone. No one waited for me. And strangely, I thought that was exactly how I wanted my life to be. Relationships always seemed like distractions. I watched friends fall in love, get their hearts broken, cry for weeks, then start over again. I promised myself I would never let anyone have that kind of power over me. Love was optional. Success was forever. Or at least, that's what I believed. There was only one person who never stopped trying to change my mind. His name was Daniel Brooks. Daniel and I had known each other since college. We met during our first year when I accidentally dropped all my books on the library stairs. While everyone else walked past, Daniel stopped. He picked up every notebook one by one. "You dropped your future," he joked with a warm smile. I laughed. That was the beginning of a friendship that lasted almost 8 years. Daniel wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He wasn't the loudest person in any room. But he had something rare: kindness. The kind of kindness that expected nothing in return. He remembered everyone's birthday. He stayed late to help co-workers finish projects. He volunteered at animal shelters every weekend. If someone needed help moving furniture at midnight, Daniel would be there before anyone else. He had one of those smiles that made difficult days feel lighter. People naturally trusted him, including me. Every Friday after work, Daniel invited me to dinner. Sometimes we ate burgers, sometimes pizza. Sometimes we simply walked through the city park, carrying coffee cups while talking about everything and nothing. He listened more than he spoke. Whenever I complained about work, he listened patiently. Whenever I doubted myself, he reminded me how capable I was. Whenever I celebrated success, he cheered louder than anyone else. Looking back now, I realized something that I couldn't see then. Daniel wasn't just being friendly. He loved me. Everyone knew it. Everyone except me. Or maybe I knew. I just pretended not to. One evening, my best friend Sophie finally confronted me. "You know Daniel likes you, right?" I shrugged without looking up from my phone. "He's just nice." "No," she replied firmly. "He's in love with you." I laughed. "You watch too many romance movies." Sophie sighed. "Emma, no man looks at someone the way Daniel looks at you unless his heart already belongs to her." Her words stayed in my mind longer than I expected. That weekend, Daniel invited me to watch the sunset from our favorite hill overlooking the city. The sky slowly turned shades of orange, pink, and purple. "It never gets old," Daniel said softly. "What doesn't?" "This view." I smiled. "It really doesn't." For several minutes we sat quietly. The cool evening breeze carried the scent of fresh grass. Then Daniel spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you ever think about the future?" "All the time." "What does it look like?" I answered without hesitation. "A better job. Bigger apartment, traveling around Europe, maybe starting my own company." Daniel nodded. "Sounds amazing. What about you?" He looked toward the horizon before answering. "My future is much simpler." "Oh?" I just hope the person I love is sitting beside me. For a brief second, everything became silent. I understood exactly what he meant. I felt my heartbeat quicken. I could have said something, anything. Instead, I looked away. "That's sweet," I whispered. Daniel smiled. But this time, his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. He changed the subject, pretending nothing had happened. I was relieved, or at least I thought I was. Weeks turned into months. Nothing changed between us. We still laughed together. We still met every Friday. We still shared dreams and stories. But something invisible had shifted. Daniel smiled a little less. He became quieter. Sometimes I caught him staring at me before quickly looking away. I noticed, yet I convinced myself that ignoring it was easier than facing the truth. I told myself I wasn't ready. Maybe someday. Maybe later. Maybe when life became less busy. I believed there would always be another chance. I had no idea that life doesn't always give second chances. Sometimes the words we refuse to say become the ones that haunt us forever. And I was about to learn that lesson in the most heartbreaking way imaginable. The following Monday started like every other Monday. I woke up before my alarm, brewed a cup of coffee, and rushed through my morning routine. My phone buzzed with work emails, deadlines, and meeting reminders. It was just another busy day, or so I thought. As I left my apartment, I noticed a message from Daniel. "Good morning, Emma. Don't work too hard today, and don't forget to eat lunch this time." I smiled. That was Daniel. Even when he had his own problems, he somehow remembered to take care of everyone else. I typed a quick reply. "I'll try, thanks, Mom." A few seconds later, he answered, "Someone has to look after you." I laughed softly, slipped my phone into my pocket, and headed to work. I didn't know those would be the last words we would ever exchange. The day was overwhelming. Meeting after meeting, phone call after phone call. By late afternoon, I had completely forgotten about Daniel's message. Around 5 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Sophie. I almost ignored the call. She usually called after work, and I assumed it wasn't urgent. But something made me answer. "Hey, Soph, what's up?" There was silence. Then I heard her breathing, heavy, uneven. "Emma?" Her voice trembled. "Can you come to St. Mary's Hospital?" My heart skipped. "What happened?" Another pause. "It's Daniel." Every muscle in my body froze. "What about him?" "He was in a car accident." The room suddenly felt too small. I couldn't breathe. "No, they're still trying to save him." Without another word, I grabbed my bag and ran. I don't remember leaving the office. I don't remember getting into a taxi. All I remember was repeating one sentence over and over in my head. "Please be okay." Traffic had never felt so cruel. Every red light, every slow-moving car, every passing second felt like a lifetime. I kept calling Daniel. Once, twice, 10 times. Straight to voicemail. For the first time in years, he wasn't answering. When I arrived at the hospital, Sophie was waiting near the emergency entrance. Her eyes were swollen from crying. The moment she saw me, she hugged me tightly. I knew. Before she said a word, I knew. "No," I whispered. She shook her head slowly. "They couldn't save him." The world stopped. I heard people talking, doctors walking past, machines beeping. But everything sounded far away, like I was underwater. "No." I repeated it again. "There has to be a mistake." Sophie cried harder. "I'm so sorry." I pushed past her. "There has to be a mistake." I ran toward the nurse's station. "I'm looking for Daniel Brooks." A nurse looked at me with gentle, sorrowful eyes. "I'm sorry." Those 2 words shattered something inside me. She led me to a quiet room. I wasn't ready. No one could ever be ready. Daniel lay peacefully beneath a white blanket. His eyes were closed. His face looked calm, as though he were simply asleep. I waited for him to smile, to open his eyes, to tell me it was all some terrible misunderstanding. But he didn't move. I slowly reached for his hand. It was cold, too cold. The tears I'd been holding back finally came. "I'm here," I whispered. "You said someone had to look after me." My voice broke. "So, who's going to do that now?" There was only silence. I had imagined hundreds of conversations with Daniel over the years. None of them ended like this. I fell to my knees beside the bed. "I'm sorry." The words poured out between sobs. I'm sorry I never understood. I'm sorry I kept making you wait. I'm sorry I thought there would always be more time. For the first time, I admitted the truth. I love you, Daniel. The room remained silent. Those were the words he had waited years to hear, and I had spoken them only after it was too late. Hours later, a nurse handed me a small brown envelope. This belonged to Daniel. Inside were his wallet, his watch, his apartment keys, and a folded letter with my name written neatly across the front. For Emma. My hands trembled. I stared at it for what felt like forever. Part of me wanted to open it immediately. Another part was terrified, because deep inside, I already knew whatever was written inside that letter would change my life forever. I slipped it carefully into my bag. I wasn't ready to read it. Not yet. Outside the hospital, the rain began to fall. I stood beneath the grey sky, clutching the envelope against my chest. For years, Daniel had carried his love for me in silence. Now, all I had left was a letter, and a heart full of regrets that no apology could ever erase. 3 days passed after Daniel's funeral. They were the longest 3 days of my life. The apartment felt colder than ever. The silence that I once treasured had become unbearable. Everywhere I looked, something reminded me of him. The coffee mug he had given me for my birthday. The scarf he insisted I wear during winter because I was always forgetting how cold it gets. The little cactus on my windowsill, the one he joked would survive because it was just as stubborn as I was. I hadn't touched any of it. I couldn't. Every memory felt like another crack in my heart. Friends called to check on me. My parents begged me to come stay with them for a while. I thanked them, but I wanted to be alone, or at least I thought I did. Late that evening, as rain tapped softly against my bedroom window, I noticed the brown envelope still resting on my kitchen table. For Emma. Daniel's handwriting was unmistakable, neat, careful, gentle, just like him. I picked it up with trembling hands. For several minutes, I simply stared at it. I wondered when he had written it. Had he planned to give it to me? Had he carried it with him every day? Or had fate simply decided that this letter would become his final goodbye? Taking a deep breath, I carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten letter. A small photograph slipped onto the floor. It was an old picture from our college graduation. We were standing side by side, laughing at something I couldn't even remember. Daniel looked at me in that photograph the same way he always had, with quiet admiration. I had never noticed. Until now, tears blurred my vision as I unfolded the letter. Dear Emma, if you're reading this, then life didn't go the way either of us expected. I hope that's not true. I hope I'm sitting across from you somewhere, laughing because you finally found this letter before I had the courage to give it to you. But if I'm not, then there are a few things I need you to know. Emma, from the day we met on those library stairs, you've been the most important person in my life. You probably never realized it. Honestly, I hoped you never would unless you felt the same. I never wanted my feelings to become a burden. Loving you was never painful because you didn't love me back. It was beautiful simply because you existed. Watching you chase your dreams made me proud. Seeing you smile made every difficult day worth it. Hearing you laugh became my favorite sound. People often ask me why I never gave up on you. The truth is, love isn't always about being chosen. Sometimes it's about choosing someone every single day, even when they don't know it. I don't regret loving you, not for 1 second. If one day you realize how I felt, please don't blame yourself. You never promised me anything. You never lied to me. You simply followed your heart, and I respected that. There's only one thing I ask. Don't let regret become your future. Don't close your heart because of me. Love someone. Laugh again. Travel like you always dreamed. Build that company. Live the life you've always wanted. If another person someday looks at you the way I did, please don't make them wait forever. Life is much shorter than we believe, and sometimes tomorrow never comes. Thank you for every conversation, every coffee, every sunset, every ordinary moment that became extraordinary simply because you were there. You made my life happier than you'll ever know. With all my heart, Daniel. By the time I reached the final line, I was sobbing. The paper shook in my hands. How could someone love another person so deeply and ask for nothing in return? Daniel had every reason to be angry, every reason to blame me. Instead, his final words were filled with kindness. Even in goodbye, he was thinking about my happiness. I hugged the letter tightly against my chest. "I'm so sorry," I whispered into the empty room. "I should have seen you." The memories came rushing back. Every coffee we shared, every Friday evening, every thoughtful text, every smile, every moment I had mistaken for simple friendship. It had been love all along, not loud, not dramatic, not demanding, just patient, steady, unconditional, and I had been too afraid to recognize it. The next morning, I visited the park where we used to watch the sunset. I sat alone on our favorite bench. The city looked exactly the same. People laughed. Children played. Dogs chased balls across the grass. Life continued as though nothing had happened. But everything inside me had changed. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to say the words aloud. "I loved you too, Daniel." The wind carried the words into the evening sky. He wasn't there to hear them, but somehow, I hoped my heart had finally spoken loudly enough. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, I realized something. Daniel's story had ended. Mine hadn't. The question was no longer whether I had loved him. The question was what I would do with the life he had begged me to keep living. And for the first time since losing him, I decided that maybe, just maybe, the best way to honor his love was not to spend the rest of my life mourning it. It was to become the person he had always believed I could be. 6 months passed. People often say that time heals everything. They're wrong. Time doesn't erase pain. It simply teaches you how to carry it. Every morning, I still reached for my phone, expecting to see Daniel's cheerful message waiting for me. "Good morning, Emma. Have an amazing day." But the screen was always empty. For a moment, my heart would ache all over again. Then I would remember Daniel was gone. Yet somehow he was still with me. His letter stayed inside my handbag wherever I went. The edges had become worn from being unfolded so many times. Whenever life felt too heavy, I would read it again. Each time I discovered something new, not because the words had changed, but because I had. One Saturday afternoon, I decided to visit the animal shelter where Daniel had volunteered every weekend. The manager recognized his photograph immediately. "You must be Emma," she said gently. I looked surprised. "You know my name?" She smiled. "Daniel talked about you all the time." My heart tightened. "He did?" She nodded. "He always said there was someone very special in his life. He never complained that you didn't love him back. He simply hoped you were happy." Tears filled my eyes. The manager led me through the shelter. Dozens of dogs wagged their tails as we walked past. Cats curled up peacefully in warm blankets. Every volunteer spoke warmly about Daniel. He never missed a Saturday. He remembered every animal's name. He always stayed late to help clean. He donated food whenever the shelter ran low. Listening to them, I realized something. Daniel hadn't just changed my life. He had quietly changed the lives of so many others, without asking for recognition, without expecting applause, simply because kindness was who he was. Before leaving, the manager handed me a small notebook. "We found this in Daniel's locker. It's yours." Inside were simple handwritten notes, ideas, dreams, shopping lists, little reminders. As I turned the pages, one sentence caught my attention. "Never stop believing in Emma. One day she'll realize how incredible she truly is." I pressed the notebook against my chest and cried. Even in his private thoughts, he believed in me more than I believed in myself. That evening, I walked to the hill where we used to watch the sunset. The same breeze brushed across my face. The same city lights slowly appeared below. For months I had come here searching for Daniel. Tonight I came searching for myself. I remembered his words from the letter. "Don't let regret become your future." For the first time, I understood what he meant. Regret had already stolen enough from me. If I allowed it to steal the rest of my life, then Daniel's greatest wish would never come true. The following week, I made a decision. I left the job that had consumed every hour of my life. It wasn't easy. Many people thought I was making a mistake. "You've worked so hard for this position," my manager said. "I know," I replied, "but I've forgotten how to live." Using the savings I'd built over the years, I started my own graphic design studio, something I had dreamed about but was always too afraid to pursue. The first few months were difficult. Some days I wondered if I'd made the wrong choice. Whenever fear crept in, I opened Daniel's letter. His words reminded me to keep going. Slowly, my business began to grow. One client became 3. 3 became 10. For the first time in years, work felt meaningful instead of exhausting. I also began volunteering every Saturday at the animal shelter. At first I went because it reminded me of Daniel. Eventually I went because it reminded me of the kind of person I wanted to become. One rainy afternoon, a frightened golden retriever refused to leave the corner of its kennel. The volunteers said no one had been able to calm him. I sat quietly beside him. I didn't force him to come closer. I simply waited. After several minutes, he slowly rested his head on my knee. The volunteers smiled. "He trusted you." I smiled through my tears. "No," I whispered. "I think someone taught me how to be patient." Months later, I adopted that dog. I named him Sunny, not because every day was happy, but because Daniel had always believed that even after the darkest storm, the sun would rise again. One evening, while organizing old boxes in my apartment, I found the framed graduation photograph of Daniel and me. For the first time since his death, I didn't cry when I looked at it. Instead, I smiled. "I finally understand," I said softly. "I loved you. And because of you, I'm finally learning how to love life too." Outside my window, the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. It looked just like the evening Daniel had asked me about my future. Back then, I couldn't imagine sharing my life with anyone. Now I understood that love wasn't about losing your dreams. The right love inspires you to chase them. Daniel had loved me without asking for anything in return. His greatest gift wasn't the letter he left behind. It was the courage he unknowingly placed inside my heart. And although I still missed him every single day, for the first time my memories brought more gratitude than pain. I knew my story wasn't ending with regret. It was beginning with hope. 2 years passed. Life looked different now. My graphic design studio had grown beyond anything I had imagined. Every Saturday, I still volunteered at the animal shelter. Sunny had become my constant companion, greeting me with the same excitement every time I walked through the front door. The pain of losing Daniel never completely disappeared. It simply became a quiet part of who I was. Some days I still caught myself reaching for my phone to send him a funny photo or tell him about something that had happened at work. Then I would remember, and instead of crying, I would smile, because I knew exactly what he would have said. One crisp autumn morning, I received a phone call from the animal shelter. "Emma," the manager said, "we're having a dedication ceremony this weekend." "A dedication?" "Yes. Our volunteers raised enough money to build a new outdoor play area for the rescued dogs." "That's wonderful. We've decided to name it after Daniel." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My eyes filled with tears. "Are you sure?" She laughed softly. "There isn't a single person who deserves it more." Saturday arrived with clear blue skies. Friends, volunteers, families, and local supporters gathered around the new play area. Children laughed as rescued dogs ran freely across the grass. Near the entrance stood a small wooden sign, "The Daniel Brooks Memorial Garden. Kindness lives forever in the hearts it touches." I gently traced the engraved letters with my fingertips. "This would have embarrassed you," I whispered with a smile. "But secretly, I think you would have loved it." The shelter manager invited me to say a few words. I walked to the front, my heart pounding. For a moment I looked at the crowd. Then I looked toward the sky. I used to believe success meant having the perfect career, the perfect apartment, and the perfect life. I paused. I was wrong. Someone once loved me quietly. He never asked me to love him back. He simply showed up. He listened. He cared. He believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. I smiled through my tears. I realized I loved him. Only after I lost him, the crowd fell silent. If you have someone in your life who loves you, someone who stands beside you through ordinary days, someone who makes your world a little brighter, please don't wait. Tell them. Hug them. Thank them. Love isn't guaranteed tomorrow. We only have today. A gentle breeze swept through the garden. For just a second, it felt as though Daniel was standing beside me again. Not as a memory, but as the quiet strength that had helped me become the person I was always meant to be. That evening, I returned to the hill where everything had changed. The same sunset stretched across the horizon, orange, pink, gold. I sat on our favorite bench with Daniel's letter in my hands. The paper had become soft with age. I read it one final time, then I folded it carefully. "I don't need to carry this everywhere anymore," I whispered. "Because your words already live here." I placed my hand over my heart. "You taught me that love isn't measured by how long it lasts. It's measured by how deeply it changes us." For the first time, I felt complete peace. I looked toward the fading sunlight and smiled. "I loved you too late, Daniel. But I will spend the rest of my life making sure your love was never wasted." The sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon. Darkness settled over the city, yet somehow everything felt brighter, because real love never truly disappears. It becomes the courage we carry, the kindness we share, the hope we pass on, and sometimes the greatest love stories aren't the ones where two people stay together forever. They're the ones where one person's love changes another person's life forever. So if there is someone you love, don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't assume there will always be another tomorrow. Say the words today, because life is fragile, time is precious. And the saddest sentence anyone can ever say is, "I loved you too late." The end.